Today on Doomed, we have a metaphorical bedbug problem on this episode of the show. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're talking the New York Times' very own Bret Stephens. And joining me, your host, Matt Binder, is Dave Karpf, an associate professor in the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University. But most importantly, he's the guy currently feuding with Bret Stephens because he called him a bedbug. Folks, as always, you can support this show at patreon.com/mattbinder, subscribing at youtube.com/mattbinder, and the podcast at doomedpod.com. And without any further ado, Professor Dave Karpf, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks.
You broke up a little bit.
I said thanks for having me. You got that?
There we go. Yep. No, I couldn't hear you at all, actually. But thank you for joining us. Tech issues happen on this show. The audience is used to it. Sound good now? That's what matters most.
Perfect. Let's chat.
All right, Dave. So basically, let's start at the beginning here, because I think everybody who at least listens to this show is somewhat familiar, at least with, they went on Twitter last week and saw Bret Stephens or Bedbug or Bretbug trending on Twitter. And, maybe they checked out why, maybe they didn't, but why don't you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, so I made a Twitter joke. It was the first week of classes. I had just taught class. I logged onto Twitter. There's a headline about how there are bedbugs in the New York Times newsroom. And I'm one of the many people on Twitter. Every time Bret Stephens has an article up, we talk about how it's a really irritating article. You complain about the quality of his writing. And you end up talking about how, God, it just seems like the New York Times newsroom cannot get rid of this guy. So I thought for my, at that time, pretty small Twitter audience, that it would be funny to write, the bedbugs are a metaphor. The bedbugs are Bret Stephens. I wrote that, went about my day, walking home, and at the end of the day, and noticed that I've gotten 0 retweets and 9 likes, which is like, I thought I could get like 3 retweets, 20 likes. I thought this was like a slightly better joke than that. Again, I'm like not my best work, not my worst work. And then that night, Bret Stephens sends me an email from his New York Times account titled "From Bret Stephens, New York Times," CCing the provost of my university, which is like very, very big guns, to yell at me because he thinks I've set a new record for indecency on the internet by calling him a metaphorical bug. He sees the provost. He tells me that I should come up to New York, come to his house, meet his wife and kids, and then call him a bedbug to his face, because then at least I would have intellectual integrity. And he says that he'll be civil about it no matter what happens. And, that's ridiculous. The serious part is, like, I'm a tenured professor, so I'm not scared. The serious end of this is, if he's spending his Monday night looking around for mean tweets on the internet, he's probably also sending them to people who aren't tenured professor, people who he can have a real effect on. So it's really not cool what he's doing, and it's really funny that he's doing it to me. So I then post to Twitter, a well-known New York Times columnist just sent me this email. I made a joke about him with 0 retweets, 9 likes. He doesn't like that I called him a metaphorical bedbug. About an hour after that, with much of Twitter saying, "You have got to show us this email," I posted the email, which was even funnier than I made it look. And that's been my week. How's your week been? Chaos ever since.
I mean, I'm someone who sort of relishes in that type of stuff, so I wish I got that Bret Stephens email.
Right.
Oh man, this is fantastic. The funny thing is, clearly Bret Stephens is not a bedbug. His skin isn't thick enough. They've got a pretty, their exoskeleton's pretty thick. This guy's got such a thin skin. It's amazing. The weird thing to me, though, The weirdest thing to me is that, we are now a week away. We'll go back and talk a little bit more about that email, but we're now a week away now a week out from when he sent that email and this whole thing went down. And, you'd think for people who are just listening to this show and haven't really been paying attention to the feud, they'd be like, oh, why is Matt now talking about this, this funny thing that probably lasted for a day or two on Twitter? Why is he talking about it a week later? Why don't you tell us while we're still talking about Bret Stephens and this bedbug thing? This is actually where it gets a little bit less funny.
Right. So this really, I spent the day Friday kind of happy that it was clearly over. Like, my Twitter mentions had calmed down. Like, he had said a thing on MSNBC about how this is the language of totalitarian regimes, which, for your listeners, if they're wondering, I am not a totalitarian regime. I'm a guy who teaches grad classes in political communication and writes books that they almost definitely don't read.
I'm sorry. Did I not correctly introduce you at the beginning?
Really not a totalitarian government.
Did I not correctly introduce you at the beginning of the show? Emperor Karpf? Did I not?
Right, exactly. I am not an emperor. But so he says that on MSNBC, and people make more fun of him. He had quit Twitter, and people were making fun of him. By Friday, it is clearly over. I'm happy about that. And then he comes out Friday night with an article in the New York Times itself, which anyone who's followed this at all, anyone who's been on the internet for the week, it's very clear that it is a thinly veiled subtweet that is calling me a Nazi.
Right.
And that's less funny, right? Like, that's when the joke gets weird and awkward. So the argument that he makes in the article is, the Nazi regime compared Jews to bedbugs. They used radio to do it. That propaganda is part of what led to World War II. And whereas they had radio, now we've got Twitter, and people are too mean on Twitter, particularly the left. And the people who are most vulnerable of all on Twitter in 2019 are moderate Republicans. Which, first of all, every reader who's been online knows exactly what he's talking about in this article. He's very clearly saying, that guy Dave Karpf and all the other people who are mean to me, they're the real Nazis, which, not cool. But, also set that aside. Let's pretend there's no subtweet. It's 2019. How can you imagine that the people most vulnerable on social media are moderate Republicans? Where have you been, man?
Right.
So that got weird.
To really make people understand, this isn't I'm sure we've all been online and tweeting, and then some actual shit poster or actual alt-right adjacent person tries to throw it back in your face when someone calls them a white supremacist or a Nazi, and they go, no, actually you're the Nazi. That's not what this is. This is a New York Times columnist writing in the New York Times, this will be out there forever, calling you without using your name, but still everyone will know. They'll go back and be able to figure out what he's talking about, saying that you are a Nazi. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, just so your listeners know, I'm Jewish. Just another layer of really not cool, man. Really, the real Nazis are the Jewish professors who said a mean thing, not even to you, but about you on social media a week ago. We got bigger problems here. Come on.
Right. First they called me a bedbug, and I did not speak out. It's it's unbelievable that this.
That was great. So Senator Brian Schatz tweeted something like that in response to it. He said, first they came for the I forget the precise thing. It was first they came for the moderate New York Times columnists, and I said nothing because they had New York Times columns, and also they weren't coming for them. Come on, man.
Right.
It's been a weird week.
And the thing that really gets me, and this is something, I actually pulled that MSNBC clip because there's something I want to bring up in it. I'll play it. I'm not sure if you'll hear it on your end, but I'll let you know when it's over. You know exactly what I'm talking about, the clip though.
Yeah.
But the thing that really, bugs me about all this is that this is a guy, and I don't think this has been pointed out enough actually. This is a guy who, and someone went back, and credit to whoever did this, went back into his old Wall Street Journal writings, and this guy who says calling someone a bug is fascism, he's on record in the Wall Street Journal equating the Palestinians, an entire race of people, to mosquitoes. It's stunning that he would all of a sudden find this to be so unbelievably fascist when it's thrown back in his face. Bizarre. I mean, let's play this clip actually, because there's something that I think we should call out here that he tries to get away with, and I want to make sure we don't let him get away with it. Playing this clip now.
I'm going to be careful with my words because I know these are going to be examined carefully. So I think Twitter brings out the worst in its users. It tends to bring out the worst in its users. And yesterday, a professor at George Washington University described me as a bedbug or a metaphorical bedbug, just in the context of the New York Times having a bedbug problem in our building. And I think that kind of rhetoric is dehumanizing and totally unacceptable, no matter where it comes from. So I wrote him a personal email. I didn't go to Twitter. I wrote him a personal email, which I think was very civil, saying that I didn't appreciate it, that I would welcome him to come to my home in New York, meet with my family, and see if he would call me a bedbug to my face, because a lot of the things people say on social media aren't the things they're really prepared to say in one-on-one interactions. I also copied his provost on the note. People are upset about this. I want to be clear. I had no intention whatsoever to get him in any kind of professional trouble, but it is the case at the New York Times and other institutions that people should be aware, managers should be aware of the way in which their people, their professors or journalists interact with the rest of the world. That's certainly the case with me at the New York Times. My editors are always aware of what I'm saying, and I've sometimes been called to account, rightly so. He then posted my email on Twitter, so people are free to go and look at what I had to say. All I would say is that using dehumanizing rhetoric like bedbugs or, analogizing people to insects is always wrong. We can do better. We should be the people on social media that we are in real life.
I would agree with that.
Now, the reason I played that part of the clip, and I think it was important to play, is that he really stresses on live cable television that he wasn't out to get you fired or in trouble in any way. What he really was out to do, the important reason, was just to CC your provost, basically your boss, like you said, was to just, make them aware of what, one of their professors, I guess, in actuality, one of their employees was doing online. And his argument is that, he CC'd him on it with the email, so you saw what he did. It wasn't like he was going behind your back trying to, sneakily get you fired while playing tough guy, telling you to come to your home and call you a bedbug in front of your wife and his wife and kids. But something after that came out. Well, you mentioned it. He actually wasn't so truthful about just contacting you and your provost in that one email.
Yeah, so he CC'd the provost on that email, and then it looks like after I posted about the email, after I said this guy, some New York Times columnist, didn't mention his name, mind you, didn't like this tweet about being called a metaphorical bedbug. I'm the associate director of the School of Media and Public Affairs. He found the email address of the director of the School of Media and Public Affairs. So I guess he's my colleague, but effectively my direct boss. And he sent him an email saying, hey, so I contacted this professor of yours about this. He called me a bedbug online, and he just posted about it on Twitter. So it seems he's not properly apologizing. So I hope you can get him to apologize. I don't have the language in front of me, but that's basically what he said. Which, again, like this works at the sentence level, but not the paragraph level. Like the idea that he wanted to make sure that the provost and my director knew what I was saying, and he wanted to express to me that what I was saying was an awful thing, but he wasn't trying to get me in trouble. No, you're trying to call the management to say to the management, look what's happening with this person. You got to do something about it. And then throwing up your hands and saying, well, I didn't say what you were supposed to do about it. I just wanted to make sure you know that I'm terribly offended. Like he's challenging, he's assuming that everyone who's listening to him lacks even baseline intelligence.
Right. And like you mentioned, you're a tenured professional. People don't understand what does that actually mean. Like what does that what sort of protection does that give you from a New York Times op-ed writer?
So, tenured professor means that it's very, very difficult to fire me. That I have done enough research and teaching and service over years. It's usually about 6 years once you land a tenure track job. And then if you earn tenure, it's not impossible to fire you, but it's very hard. And all professors have free speech. Academic freedom is an important priority for everybody, but it's a priority that's more tenuous when you're pre-tenure. If that had gotten sent when I was still an assistant professor, it would have been effectively pretty terrifying. It probably would have silenced me, because up until that moment, the provost running a big university doesn't know who I am. And you don't really want to be the professor who shows up on the provost's radar as the guy who's joking around online and getting the New York Times pissed off at him. So that would have had a silencing effect if I'd been a more junior professor, if I'd been me 4 years ago. But as a tenured professor, not only did I know I hadn't done anything wrong, but also I knew that there wasn't really any consequence that I was directly going to face. So him being ridiculous meant that I could react appropriately and ridicule him.
Right. So, for listeners of the show, by the way, along with the numerous other reasons why I could never become a tenured professor, going 6 years without joking online would be one of them as well. But anyway, you brought up something really interesting earlier, and I want to go back to that, and that was that you being who you are, not just the tenured professor thing, but you're able to go out and you're able to say what you said, and the consequences are what Bret Stephens did. And then on the opposite side, the consequences of Bret Stephens is facing as a 40-something-year-old white man working in a very nice job at the New York Times. I'm sure it pays very well. He's able to do what he did, and not just get called just the worst thing he's ever been called. Apparently, seems to be a bedbug. But on top of that, he's able, looks like so far, to do everything he just did to you and face no consequences either. And you bring up that, in this day and age online, and, I'm sure you can speak from this too as someone who teaches in this digital media realm, that's the case for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, this has been easy and funny for me because I'm a tenured white guy. Which means that I'm not the target online that so many other people are. There was very little at risk for me this entire. It's also been an easier week for Bret Stephens. The right doesn't like Bret Stephens. Donald Trump tweeted about this, making fun of the guy. And the fact that the right doesn't like him either. There have been articles in Breitbart, there's been articles in Fox News and Daily Caller all taking my side in this argument, which is a weird, bizarre world. But everyone lining up against him meant that in all of this, I haven't faced the trolling that is so often associated with these social media scandals. When you're in the center of a social media storm, things usually get really bruising and potentially dangerous. And it's been lighter and funnier for me. I mean, Friday night was not funny. Getting called a Nazi in the New York Times, not a fun day. But besides that, this has been the easiest social media storm somebody could be in the center of. But also, the other side of that is Bret Stephens, it looks like, is just kind of another column on Tuesday or Friday. He's just going to keep doing what he does, just with a new nickname, because it seems like there's not a lot that he can do that's going to embarrass the New York Times enough that they'll bother to go find a conservative writer who works harder at his job and isn't as vindictive as he is.
Right. It's really, it bothers me a lot, actually, that, in the Trump era, there's been a real push in these legacy publications, such as one as important as the paper of record, the New York Times, to really go out of their way to sort of let these they're in very small numbers, but I feel like they speak as if there's some large population making up 50% of the country who they speak for. These never Trump or anti-Trump conservatives like Bret Stephens. How they're able to just not only get all these platforms now, being the respectable Republicans, but they seem to get away with so much. Like, again, let's just stick with the Bret Stephens example. I mean, this is a guy who's been writing for the New York Times and this isn't like the first, like you said, like the reason you even call him a bedbug was when a Bret Stephens column comes out, it's almost like everybody just piles on the guy because he really is bad at what he does. I mean, this is a guy who's a never Trump conservative, who rails against climate change. He's a climate denier. Although, to be fair to him, he calls himself agnostic on the issue, which, of course, what a great issue to be agnostic on, right? I mean, yeah. And then on top of that, this is a guy who, and this is to me the real kicker. This is one of the leading, like he's not one of those intellectual dark web guys. He's not an IDW guy, but he might as well be because he's in the same ideological spectrum as these guys. But he's one of the main voices out there who, if a student is told to not hurt an LGBT student's feelings on a college campus, it's like a bat signal goes out for Bret Stephens, and he's got to write a New York Times column about how a conservative his freedom of speech rights has been taken away from him because someone dared to tell him not to say something about, I don't know, a black student on campus or an LGBT person on campus or, anyone who isn't a conservative, basically. Here's a guy who's trying to go after you for you basically just using your right to free speech.
Yeah, and what that points to is that the conversation about free speech, particularly conservative speech on college campuses, is usually about privilege and power. Right? Like what they're saying is free speech for us and civility for everyone else. We should be able to say whatever we want to say. Everyone should feel challenged by it, and then everyone else should be nice to us. If we come to your campus with a big speaker's fee, there shouldn't be any protesting. Everyone should politely listen and be civil, and then I should get to walk away with my speaker's fee. And anyone on the other side who I disagree with, well, they should get pilloried. They should have their bosses called. They should get shamed for ever saying anything that we don't like because that would be uncivil.
So what as a professor of digital media and what is this gonna, like, how are you gonna, I mean, you're definitely gonna bring it into your classroom, I assume. Like this is
already have.
So what are you telling your students? This is great. I got to hear a little bit of what's going on with how you're using this in the classroom, because this is a perfect life lesson for the future journalists of America.
So I teach a class in strategic political communication. We always start the class session with what happened in the news this week. And we talk about the scandals that we're seeing in the news. We talk about how it relates to the readings. We talk about the strategic lessons we can get from it.
And how often? Oh, you froze on Skype. Sorry about that.
Again on Wednesday, and
just go. Froze. So just go back a little bit.
2 days a week. Sure. I teach a class on strategic political communication. We always lead with what happened in the news this week. So scandal breaks, we talk through how it relates to the readings. We talk about the strategic lessons we can draw out of it. So I taught class on Wednesday, and we went through how did we get to this point? What are the choices that he made? What are the choices that I made? What could each of us done differently, and what lessons can we draw about how to operate strategically in the digital age? So the big thing we're talking about there is the way that he, in sending the email, thought he was having one type of conversation with me. He thought it was a conversation between him, a unruly professor, and the professor's boss. And I had the ability to turn it into a different conversation by taking a screenshot and making it a conversation amongst the entire internet about Bret Stephens and how heavily he's overreacting to delight his criticisms.
I mean, how often do you get to come up in your weekly what's going on in the news? How often does the professor himself come up in those stories? I mean, this is great. I would think it's great if I was the teacher.
Honestly, man, it's so awkward though. It's in the same way that late in the semester, I write a lot about this stuff. So late in the semester, they end up reading my stuff. I hate teaching my own work. It is so awkward having a room full of students, saying to a room full of students, so what did you think about those paragraphs that I wrote? In the same way, like it's fun because like I did pretty well with this, so there's not an awful lot of like, here's how I strategically messed up. But it's like a little awkward having this conversation with students where basically what I'm saying is, let me brag to you all about how smart I am strategically and learn from me. Like that's a weird flex for me to do too. But
right.
if I'm going to do one of the news, I guess we'll talk about it. Sure.
Right. I haven't read your books, but one of them, I was reading up about it, analytic activism, and you talk about how what the activism that's going online isn't just like a one-way street. It's not just people with a call to action to get something done. There's also organizations and folks on the other end who are taking that information and sort of breaking it down to figure out what works and what doesn't. So is that a correct, would you say it's a correct analysis of summary of your work? So what would you say is sort of like the lesson that a Bret Stephens could learn from this? Because it seems like he should be taking what just happened and thinking to himself, maybe the digital strategy of emailing everyone who dares to bother me, not such a good plan of action.
Yeah, I mean, there's a general strategic lesson about, so there's two big ones. One is understanding your own vulnerabilities and trying to stay away from them. And another, this goes back to Saul Alinsky from 1971, Rules for Radicals. Alinsky talks about how one of the most powerful tools an activist group can have when they're confronting powerful elites is ridicule, right? And a big part of this story is how facing ridicule, the guy just utterly melted down and then kept making mistakes, inviting more and more ridicule. So I think that's a big part of it. But in the digital era too, like the way that things can spiral and spiral fast is something that he should have known about by now. Apparently he didn't. My guess is he'll understand it better going forward.
Right. One of the things I've learned when I debate people on the other end of the political spectrum is that usually the best points you can make and sort of get the upper hand in a debate is literally just don't interrupt them, give them some room to speak, and they will end up tripping themselves up by saying something. Their true beliefs will come out and they won't sound so smart. And in this case, I'm talking about, people and with Bret Stephens' beliefs, climate change. This is a guy who's written about the disease of the Arab mind, which basically stems from he was bothered that a single Egyptian athlete wouldn't shake the hand of an Israeli opponent at the Olympics. I mean, if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about someone, I don't know what else does. But so this is sort of what happened here. I mean, you literally just call this guy a metaphorical bedbug as sort of a lighthearted joke online, and he's just constantly tripping over himself now without you doing anything really.
Yeah. I've barely been dunking on him. I've mostly been in the rim. Like he keeps a super real trunk on his face, and I'm just the rim, just sitting there. Like all I really did was post the email and point at it.
Right. So where does this? I hate to call it a feud. Everyone's calling it a feud. You probably call it a feud yourself because it just sounds cool. I mean, I'm feuding with a New York Times writer, but like, where are we at now? Where are we at now with over a week away from you calling this guy a bedbug, a metaphorical bedbug? That's even something I want to even just say again. You didn't even call him a bedbug. You called him a metaphorical bedbug, talking about a story where the New York Times had literal bedbugs.
Right. Yeah. I just called him an irritating and difficult to remove. Yeah.
It's geez. You know what? I think, a bedbug, you try to get rid of a bedbug infestation, one thing they won't do is email your boss to try to get you fired. So,
right.
So, Bret Stephens, maybe bedbug is being too kind even. So where is this at? What is, because I know your provost put out an open letter basically saying that he stands behind you and Bret Stephens is welcome to the university. So what was that all about, and what does it look like it's going to happen?
Yeah, so he said to Bret Stephens, you invited Karpf to come to your house. Why don't you come to GW instead? The idea is that the two of us can have a nice, civilized, moderated public discussion about civility and power in the digital age. That's right up my alley. I would love to do that. Bret Stephens told the provost and told the Washington Post that he accepted. We've been moving forward trying to find a date and set that up. I haven't heard whether a date's been established yet. Honestly, his Friday column was a surprise to me, and it felt like a mic drop. It felt like the thing that he would be doing when he's decided that he has won this thing and is done talking about it. So we'll see whether he's actually going to come to GW and have this conversation like he said he was, or whether now that he called me a Nazi in the page of the New York Times, he's planning on running away and doing something else. We'll see what happens.
Right. I mean, I hope he does it. I mean, if anything,
he should.
Right. You know, and not to just focus on Bret Stephens here, but I want to get, you know, Dean Baquet of the New York Times has really been absent in this, and it's stunning to me that he would let one of his employees use the pages of the paper to do what he did. It's really like it was such a small online thing that he literally made sure to get in writing in the New York Times that this is what happened to me. I'm going to make it seem much worse than it was. I believe someone even pointed out that the one example he was able to find online of Jewish people being equated to bedbugs by the Nazis was actually in a book where they add the addendum. We believe actually from what it looks like was going on at the time, the person who said this was talking about a literal bedbug problem that was happening. Like it wasn't even what he was trying to make it sound like. Mm-hmm. So have you heard any? Have you heard?
Contested at least, yeah.
Right. Have you heard anything from anyone at the New York Times? If not, you know, apologizing for Bret Stephens, just basically reaching out to you and saying like, "Listen, I don't stand behind this guy," just offering some sort of support for you.
I mean, I have not heard anything formally from the Times. No. I will say, like mildly in their defense, the Times has a rule that they copy edit their op-ed writers. They don't touch anything else about it. So it doesn't surprise me that they didn't stop this before it got into print. It does leave me wondering whether there's any consequence, though. Right? Like this is an embarrassing article, and it's not embarrassing because he's conservative. It's not embarrassing because he's a never Trumper. It's embarrassing because he devoted an article in the pages of the New York Times to a petty, small vendetta like this. And so, look, before that happened, I kind of felt like the right thing that should happen is he should get made fun of online. They should probably take him aside and say, look, man, don't send those emails anymore. And that should be the end of it. But after that column, like, he should probably at least be suspended because that is a waste of space. They can do better than that. And I'm not canceling my Times subscription. I still really like the New York Times. Michelle Goldberg is incredible. I read her like every week. I would not give that up. But they've got to have some pride. There's got to be some baseline of quality they apply to all their writers. And if this isn't below it, then what is?
Right. I mean, Bret Stephens could have used the space in the paper he spent going after you to go after one of your students.
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
That's probably what will end up happening. If he does show up at your school, he's going to end up writing an article about how the students booed him and supported their professor when he came to town or something. I guarantee it. But I hope he comes.
Not even that. Like, one of my students is going to wear like a lapel pin he doesn't like, and he's going to write an entire column about how the lapel pin was offensive. That's how it's going to go down.
Oh man. This is just I'm riveted by it. It's riveting. I hope you take full advantage of this. I see you've been rightfully so doing what you need to do to defend yourself, but literally just milk it for all it's worth, man. I would do that if I were you because this is you deserve whatever you get out of it, and I hope he gets whatever he deserves out of it. Professor Dave Karpf, thank you so much for joining us. Where could people... Oh, yeah, one last question. You had mentioned that your tweet calling him a bedbug had something like 0 retweets and like 4 or 5, 6 or 7 likes or something like that when you first tweeted it. Where are we at now?
9 likes. 9 likes.
Okay, gotta give you some more credit than
but it's but like under 10 is the like single-digit likes. I haven't checked today, but I think it was around like 40,000 likes and 3,000 or 4,000 retweets. It's this is going to go down in history as like the most seen thing that I ever write, which is like funny and maybe a little sad, but we'll see what it is.
Right. I mean, you gotta. I mean, I don't see how you don't call your next book Bedbugs or something like that. I mean, it's.
I gotta tell you, man. Like, I hope this is over because like the joke has gotten so stale for me. I mean, like, it was really funny for a week, and now I just want to like talk about other things. It was so small, and it was so funny, and it got so weird, and now it's been so long.
Well, I will tell you actually that again, I haven't read the book, but I saw that your other book is called The Move On Effect, and that is both books seem extremely interesting to me. I'm going to check them out. Another thing, I'm glad you called Bret Stephens a bedbug, and he emailed you because now I got 2 books to add to my reading list because they seem great,
There we go.
right up my
There we
alley. There was
Thanks, man.
there was Occupy, there was Black Lives Matter, there was Ron Paul, Bernie Sanders using digital media to build up an electoral machine, and now there's Bret Stephens and the Bedbugs right up there with those very influential, important movements.
Weirdest week of my life, man. Weirdest week of my life.
Where can people find you online?
Clearly on Twitter at Dave Karpf. I write for a bunch of places. I write at Medium, sometimes at Wired, sometimes I've written a couple pieces for Esquire now, but easiest is to follow me on Twitter at Dave Karpf.
All right, Dave, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Take care.
Thanks, man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. We got some extra time here, so before I bring up, I want to something. We'll do something else a little bit fun on this episode because I don't think it's a completely he's it's a fun sense of humor. The story has a sense of humor to it. Dave's a great guest, great guy, and but I think there is something incredible there. That's literally just insane. Like that a New York Times writer would do this. But anyway, patreon.com/MattBinder. We hit a nice number of Patreon subscribers. For the first time, we had 69 subscribers. I think we even hit 70 at a point. But then the first of the month came around and you lose some subscribers. Everyone does when Patreon starts charging. And so we're now at a measly, 66. So if you can afford to support this show, I would appreciate it so much. Patreon.com/MattBinder. You can also support this show by going to youtube.com and subscribing to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/MattBinder and subscribing to the YouTube channel. What else can you do to support this show? Doomedpod.com. There's links to the iTunes link and Google Play, and I got to get us some more places on the podcast. I really enjoy doing the live stream, and I'm trying to grow the YouTube a lot because I think that's where the future of this show is, and I think it actually is what sets this show apart. I mean, knowing from working at the Majority Report and talking with my good pal Michael Brooks with the Michael Brooks Show, being leftist media who run a podcast and also do a YouTube show, it sets you apart from most other the leftist podcasts because not everyone does live streams. But with that said, a large number of this audience just listens to the show on the podcast. I have the numbers in front of me and I can tell. So go to iTunes, go to Google Play. I'll get us wherever else you want me. Stitcher, Spotify, I'll look into all that stuff if we're not already there. Leave a review. Written review, star review, all that fun stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, though, you can also support this show with a one-off by leaving a super chat, giving me a super chat. I will read your, I'm saying that really funny, aren't I? Super chat. Super chat. You will be able to give a one-off donation, and also I will make sure I read your YouTube Live comment and not miss it. That's my definite promise. Also, let me read the patrons now. I usually leave that to the very end. But, we got a little bit of time. So, these are the people who make the show possible. If you're a freebie person, these people are who keeps the show alive. Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew H, RER, Benji, Bobby M, BZ, Champagne Kami, Chi, Christine H, Christopher S, Colin R, Dakota R, Dan M, Dank Uger, Dave K, Dave Z, Dragon Slayer, Fraz K, FTW All Day, Greg D, Ian Curtis J, Jameson Test, Janelle A, Jason R, Jasmine H, Jeff K, Jeremy M, John S, Jonathan B, Joseph R, Justin S, Katie S, Cats, Cash, Cats, and then Kaushal. Ooh, tongue twister there, guys. Lisa D and Lisa H, the Lisas. Machine Gun Etiquette, Max W, User Me, Michael B, Michael J, Michael M, lots of Michaels. If you'll notice, there's no Michael Brooks. You should all let him know that he's missing from this list. Mr. Danks, Nicole A, Namde Net, Null Style, Romina O, Ryan Left His Best, Scott R, Sean H, Stephen S, Struggle Session, Swizzle Malarkey, TM, Tamney G, Thaddeus A, Tina M, Tom G, Tom M, Why That Tie Guy, Will P, Utopian, Zarin, and getting in just under the wire, our newest Patreon subscriber, Eugene B. We are now at 67. Which means someone new will have the chance to be our 69th subscriber. Be the nicest of our patrons. All right, folks. Before we jump into the patron-only portion of the show, this is something that's, incredible to me. Incredible to me. Let me get to this story. It's not really a story. It's sort of a story. It's something I tweeted about earlier. If you follow me on Twitter, @MattBinder, also follow me on Instagram, @MattBinder. Also, like me on Facebook. Go to facebook.com, search Matt Binder. I'll pop up. Like the page. If you want to follow the personal profile, you can do that too if you want. I don't really... I would like to start using Facebook and Instagram more. So there you go. Also, I believe I'm on TikTok as well, but there's apparently another Matt Binder on TikTok. So I'm Matthew Binder on TikTok. I'm not using TikTok right now. Let's talk about this because it's getting retweeted a lot on Twitter. I tweeted this out. It's really funny. Also crazy. So you all know by now probably that Apple, as in the big computer / smartphone company Apple, Steve Jobs Apple, Tim Cook Apple, Tim Apple Cook, Apple has a streaming video service in the works called Apple TV Plus. And not many details are known other than there's going to be some sort of newsroom-like morning show series with Jennifer Aniston. But I'm online today, and I see a story about how they've already axed one of the shows that they had planned to fund. And it's a show they greenlit already, but it won't be happening under Apple TV Plus anymore. And the description of the show really, it made me stop in my tracks because it is a doozy of a description. It takes you places you never thought literally 2 sentences could take you. It's a show starring Richard Gere, that was set to star Richard Gere at least, and this is the description. I read it in 9to5mac.com, but they took this from Hollywood Reporter. It's a legit story. People think I made a fake screenshot like people like that Gorilla Channel thing that went viral. I did not do that. This is real, folks. Richard Gere was set to star as one of two elderly Vietnam vets and best friends who find their monotonous lives upended when a woman they both loved 50 years ago is killed by a car. Their lifelong regrets and secrets collide with their resentments of today's self-absorbed millennials, and the duo then go on a shooting spree. Well, I feel like I need to start pitching shows to Hollywood because, I mean, I could certainly come up with something, I think at least, more, I don't know, layered than that even? See, to me, this is one show here, ready? Richard Gere stars in one of two elderly Vietnam vets and best friends who find their lives upended when a woman they both loved 50 years ago is killed by a car. I find a show about two old Vietnam boomers out sort of like a True Detective type thing. If it was like, I don't know, Richard Gere and, I don't know, Tim Allen or someone like that on a True Detective-esque adventure to find the autonomous car who murdered their former lover. It would be a wonderful show, I think. Could be a dark comedy. A killer car being hunted by two Vietnam vets. But for me, again, a lot of people are pointing out, whoa, the shooting spree. Obviously, that takes it to the next step. But to me, what really gets me is that the resentment of today's self-absorbed millennials leads to the shooting spree. If you want in a kind read of this is basically, it seems like this show, what happens is the person driving a car is probably some millennial 20-year-old. Actually, I'll guarantee you it's probably someone who's like 18 or something. And they're wrong about it being about millennials because anyone with any sort of knowledge of the generational divide will know that millennials are no longer the young adults. I mean, we're young adults in terms of millennials are now in their, I guess some of them are still in their early 20s. But what's most likely is that they're talking about Generation Y. The YouTube generation. But anyway, what happens is probably someone's texting and some youngin' is texting and driving, as us youth tend to do. And they kill this woman by hitting her with the car. And then these two just go on Facebook, read a bunch of boomer memes and get radicalized. I mean, if this wasn't going to be a TV show, I mean, for all I know, let me rewind that actually. For all I know, actually, the premise of this TV show was taken from a Facebook boomer meme because it looks like it could be one. Oh, I think someone actually might have tweeted. I wanted to see a Facebook meme put on camera or something like that. I'm just seeing this now. Oh, yeah, credit to that person. Where I can't find the tweet now. The way Twitter does this now, where you hit notification and everything just goes away. Ugh. All right. Oh, we just got another Patreon subscriber. Because we're not on the patron portion of the show yet, I'll let this person jump in. Jonathan L. Thank you so much. The next patron will be the nice patron. 69. Who will it be? Do not, if you're already a patron, do not unsubscribe and then resubscribe because you will not be 69. You'll just end up falling back to the... All right. We're enough fun here. YouTube.com/MattBinder. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Majority Report gave a shout out to my pops today. Thank you, Sam, Michael, Matt, Brendan, Jamie, all the Majority Reporters listeners who wished well to my dad, who is recuperating from his heart attack scare last week. Procedure went well. He's currently getting over his new diet, which actually is probably following that will have longer lasting effects to his well-being, his psyche, I should say, than the heart attack itself, I'm sure. He's probably gonna say something about that in the YouTube live stream, which I will read in the Patreon part of the show. Folks, see you all next time. Stick around for the members half on Doomed. We're back on the show. I know people have been wanting to see a new background on the show. Renee, of course, sent me a few backgrounds. I am still looking through those, but I got a new background. I think, I'm original, and no other show is using this background. I certainly think it's one that screams Doomed with Matt Binder. And I think this is the new background for Doomed. I know there's a lot of shows that are stealing other people's backgrounds. I heard David Pakman stole the background that Sam was using on the Majority Report. But I don't get why you do that. It's just rude. Come up with your own background, folks. Leftists should not steal from other leftists. It's quite frankly not something we should do on the left. We need to support each other. No stealing from one another. All right, folks. Man, people who are not watching on YouTube are missing out right now. So, folks who are patrons not currently... I'm looking at the comments coming. For folks who are just listening to the podcast members half right now, go to youtube.com/MattBinder. And watch. You'll probably get the gist of what's going on when I start reading some of these comments. If I didn't already give it away with my very not slick downplaying of what I've just done. What do you guys think I did when I went to when I was on the Majority Report for my birthday 2 weeks ago? You don't think I took some Sam wasn't there. The TMBS crew, Michael and Matt, were in a rush to fly to Chicago for the live show. I snuck in some photos to store in the background arsenal. All right. Renee let me know that Michael is still on earlier. What could I do? Michael was still on when I try to not do Tuesday shows, but I wanted to get Dave Karpf on as soon as possible. I had reached out to him last week, hoping to even do 2 shows last week, because I had Alex from the Portland. Excuse me, I'm looking at what's going on here. All right, well, I'll get that in a second. Alex from the Portland Mercury on to talk about the Patriot Prayer story. And I thought maybe I could do 2 stories with Dave Karpf, double week. But schedule didn't work out, and I wanted to get Dave on as soon as possible. And so that's what happened with that. What is that sound I just got here? What's going on? All right. Renee, no, I do not currently have the TMBS background. I'll be on TMBS shortly, I assume. That'll be when I collect that one to add to my collection. And I know who said that last time, Kennedy or Misha. They like when I do this to really understand what this background stuff does. So let me jump in with this so you guys could really see what's going on here. It's pretty incredible, right? How much you get out of it, right? I mean, it's a big difference, right? It's pretty good. And lighting is working good for me today. I got the lighting almost perfect. You can see there's still a little bit of I'm about to pop out one more light, and then I think we'll have it perfect. And I think I have the green screen the perfect amount away from me. And yeah, this is working out pretty good, isn't it? I also have a hand. I got a mic hand. You know, that's what you Patreon subscribers, I'm really trying to make you guys understand how everything that, like any upgrade, any update that I do with this show, and I'm working on more things too. It all comes from what you give. Like, you guys really do make this show happen. I can't stress that enough. Like, can I still do a podcast without the money? Yes. It'd be harder to grow it. It'll also be harder to make sure I do it on a regular basis because of the kids. And, you know, time is money. But you guys really make it possible to carve out the time and make this work. So, again, I can't thank you guys enough. I'm really excited about the growth of the show in recent weeks especially. Bullwhip says, great timing, Matt. TMBS just went to postgame, pay to play. There you go. And if you're a TMBS subscriber who was tuning into the your paid portion of TMBS, then you could catch the replay of this show. As long as you're consuming this show in some way, it's fine by me. If you're not a live person, that's cool. Most of you aren't. But I actually really do appreciate the live people because you guys give me the content to interact with. Oh, and, a lot of people always, not a lot, but every now and then I'll get replies from people who listen to the podcast who really enjoy my choice of music. I don't put it on the songs on here. Basically, I take a punk song or one of my favorite songs that sort of fits the theme of the episode, and I put a small, little 10, maybe 15 second part of it to close out the show on the podcast, the free half of the podcast. I don't do it on YouTube because of copyright strikes. And, I know most of my punk bands probably wouldn't copyright strike it, but one day I'll probably add, one of those bands, weird a song from their one mainstream album, and it'll get hit. So I don't want to do that. But if you're one of those people who enjoys that, I have the perfect, and I think it'll be unsurprising, perfect song by a little group called Choking Victim to throw at the end of that episode. There's actually a leftover crack song that fits it. The lyrics fit it a bit better, but the song isn't. If you don't know what they're saying, you can't really easily decipher. But let's go to the back to the comments here. Grim says Bret Bug is still mad. Oh, of course. Bullup says Bedbug Bret. Midnight Pizza Man says Matt and Mike fight for Tuesday. Listen, I would never step on Michael's toes. This is, like I say, this show is usually on a Wednesday or Thursday. Every now and then a Friday or a Saturday, sometimes even a Sunday, sometimes in a rarer case, even a Monday. I really try hard not to do Tuesday because I know the one show that I could ever possibly overlap with is Michael on Tuesday. So I really try not to do it. But every now and then it'll happen. Xerxes says, you rock, Matt. No, you rock. 2. I'll take it, but you also rock. Ezra, my 4-year-old, has started saying, let's rock and roll. So, that's fun to hear. I don't know. Grim says, Nazis were conservative. Right. Of course Nazis were conservative. Bowip says, at least it got Stephens to quit Twitter, so marginal gains. Holy shit, I forgot to... Did he mention it? I hope he did. I forgot to mention that he quit Twitter over it. My God. But you know what? That, in the end, is really the least important thing after that New York Times article he actually wrote. But I forgot to mention that he quit Twitter over it. He had to have mentioned it, right? Did Karpf mention it? Did Dave Karpf mention it? He had to have mentioned it. Can't remember now, though. Grim says Bret's a conservative. Right, and Grim is now making the connection that Bret's a modern Nazi. Right. Grim says conservatism is a victim complex masquerading as a political ideology. Yes, of course. Speedkill says Godwin's Law. By the way, Professor Karpf loves your article. By the way, this is Speedkill to Professor Karpf. By the way, Professor Karpf, love your article responding to him. Yes, it was very good. And if you missed it, I left the link in the YouTube live stream description, and also on the public, which means anyone can see it, Patreon post for the live stream episode. Grim says, send Antifa to Bret's house with Molotovs. Bullwhip says, the Binder Bunch. Oh, my dad's in the chat. Hey, Pops. How you doing? Grim says, Bret Bug played stupid games, so he won stupid prizes. Francis Zek says, hope you're doing well, Mr. Binder. My dad, Alan Binder. Steve On It on Periscope says, Bret is always the worst. My dad giving everyone the thumbs up. Grim says, I'm totally for the dehumanization of wasps. X Nihilo, why would he come into a bedbug's home? That's asking for trouble. Francis X says, Bret is the real victim here. Gary says, I'm about to slap a bitch. Well, Gary, assuming you're talking about a Bret Stephens. Grim says, I'd call him, his wife, and his effing kids filthy wasps. Well, depending on how old his kids are, leave them out of it. Bullip says, sure that passes for civilized. Alan says, my dad says, at my first job at 16 at a department store, my manager's nickname for me was Vonsel. That's bedbug in Yiddish. Is that for real? Well, Pops, I think you deserve a New York Times column. Send them an email asking for your space in the paper. Renee asked my dad any reason, and my dad says, because I was a little skinny kid. It was a term of endearment. Bullwhip says, Snowflake moderate quits Twitter over one negative comment, right? My dad says, the dude did like me. This was 1970. Grim says, Bedbug is a case of affirmative action for mediocre wasps. Of course, Ezra visited my dad. Enid didn't. A little bit too young to go to a hospital. Ezra didn't either, but he came with me to pick my dad up. And we haven't had a chance to, to bring Enid around. But he will see Enid very soon. Grim says, read This Is Not a Dialogue on It's Going Down. I will. Boep says, in the apartment complex my brother lives in, they evict tenants for having bedbugs. Gary says, Stevens equals cockroach. Grim says, wasps invaded and infested America. Grim says, I love the New York Times writing puff pieces about Gavin McInnes and the alt-right while they attack Antifa and Bernie, right? You know what? Because we have some time, I'm going to... One second. One second. I'm going to log into the... The calls. If you'd like to call into the show, do so by Skyping Doomed Live. And I will take your phone call. Excuse me for a second. So that's Skype name, Doomed Alive. Kennedy says, oh my god, TikTok is so fun. Well, I'll have to get on TikTok. I mean, I watch the TikToks that get shared off TikTok. The ridiculous ones, the cringe ones, the actual funny ones. Grim says, I'm unbanked for now, but soon. Also, I gotta throw money at the Antifada, Swamp Side Chats, and the Bad Praxis pod. Well, you know the deal with Bad Praxis. To come back on the show, each of them have to become patrons. So, Grim, if you subscribe to this show, I'll give it to one. I'll give one credit to the Bad Praxis folks. So they only need 2 people to subscribe. And then they're back on the show. Kennedy says, Bad Praxis has 11 patrons now. We're killing it. Then, I mean, what's going on here? Where's the, why aren't you guys already, securing your spot on the next Doomed Debate show? Folks, what's going on? Uncle Andy, love your show. Thank you. Well, I do have an Uncle Andy. But I'm going to assume that's not him. X Nilo says, Richard Gere still at it, huh? Go figure. Oh, Kennedy to the, Oh, we got a call. 1 second. Let's do this. Oh, boy. Where are you? Hello, who is this? You're currently on mute. Wait, no, I hear you. I hear you now. Is this Renee? Renee, is this you? You have bad connection, buddy. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you are going to hate to hear this, but gotta jump. Renee, I can't hear you at all, buddy. Call back or someone else call in and we'll see what's going on here. Boop. All right. Kennedy's reaction to the canceled Apple show, which I think was going to be called Bastards. Oh my god, holy shit, LOL, what? Autonomous car, right. Grim says, the only Richard Gere movie I saw is The Hunting Party, so this is kind of funny to me. Miniseries probably, says Grim, right. It probably was going to be a miniseries. Had to be, I mean, right? Man Up 98. Hi, Matt. How you doing? Michael McAllister. I had to choose between the TMBS postgame and Doomed. So much content, not enough time. It's cool. It happens. You can always catch the replay. Like I said, it's all good. It's all good. I was sort of hoping Michael wasn't back from his vacation yet. But what can you do? What can you do? Vanilla Cookie says, hey, what green screen you have? I have the Elgato green screen, the really cool portable one that just like you push down and it lowers into this like round tube and you pull it up and it's really simple to really simple to set up. It's fast to set up. I would never be able to do the green screen if I had to use, the traditional green screen setup. This really makes things so simple for someone who doesn't have the space to have a green screen always set up. Manup says, Matt, you should interview George Hawley. He is a prominent author on the alt-right. Well, let me, George Hawley. I'm sure when I type in his name, it'll remind me of who he is. Let me check out this book. Right. Yeah, this is definitely a good name for the list of future doomed guests. Jay Jaribis says, get well, Alan Binder. Francis Zek says, are you going to use the backgrounds Renee sent in? I will eventually. SJW 9001 says, get well, Mr. Binder. Grim says, Alan's in our prayers. My pop says, thanks, guys. It was an honor to get a shofar from Sam. Midnight Pizza Man says, fuck, I'm in 69 and gotta settle for 68. Oh, you just missed it? Well, don't worry about it. I mean, in reality, you're all 69 to me. You're all nice to me. Jesse Cool says, hey, Matt, I hope your father is okay and recovers quick. Thank you. Thank you so much. My pop says, love the Doomed and MR families. Renee says, the Dark Gritty Report. Bullwhip says, is this Pac-Man? Francis is like laughing. All right, we're now at the part of the comments where everyone saw my my background for the first time. Grim says, lol. Lord Irion says, lols. Renee says, Pac-Man isn't gritty enough. Francis says, Matt is at least 20 times as gritty and dark. Renee says, Pac-Man, not my gritty. Francis X says, smash the like button. Also, I forget to do this. Ugh, I gotta start saying this now. Hit that notification button too. The little bell right next to the subscribe button. That's the thing YouTube is making you guys do now. So, hit that button as well. Oh, we got a phone call. Let's see if this works. You hung up too fast. All right, let's do this. That's the thing YouTube's making you guys do.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, who's calling?
It's Grimlock.
Grimlock, how you doing?
I am good.
Thank you so much for calling in. It's a pleasure to see you every week in the chat.
It's a pleasure to be listening to you and conversing with comrades.
Oh, all the time. It's always great to be conversing with comrades. So what would you like to talk about?
Well, one, I did try to call and wish you a happy birthday.
Why, thank you.
So I thought that was important. But, no, I have been trying to call the the Majority Report in general, and bring up this fact that Bernie is the only one so far to really say, like, and directly said a couple weekends ago, he wants to wage war on white nationalism.
Right. That's a great point. And I think, I've actually it's been something in the back of my head that there should be, really, it would be perfect for the show to do an episode on how each current Democratic primary candidate has been tackling, the fringe right, the alt-right, white supremacy, neo-Nazis.
We're welcoming them.
Right. Right. And the thing that I think is really undercovered, no one really has been talking about this whatsoever, is that who better to take on Trump than a leftist Jewish man?
Well, yeah.
I mean, it is unbelievable to me that no one points this out. He's just thrown in with Biden and Mayor Pete as just another white guy. And yes, Jewish people do have white privilege, but at the same time,
sort of,
they're not the same as white people like Biden and Mayor Pete.
There's kind of the model minority thing going on there, where they both are. They're in this sort of like liminal sort of space. That's not exactly being privileged, but also not exactly lacking privilege.
Right. It's something actually that I myself have. People. Some people will tell me that I am not Jewish. Some people will tell me that I am Jewish, because my father is Jewish, my mother is not.
Yep.
I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school. But, having a Jewish father, I was raised with some of the different traditions and things like that. And I have not done this, but my brother has taken a 23andMe and has found out that he's extremely Ashkenazi Jewish, which means that, I mean, I know the percentages are not the same for siblings. I'm Ashkenazi Jew as well, but
it's close enough.
Right. So, let's put it, my joke I usually tell people is that, I don't call myself Jewish, but I couldn't join the KKK.
And I mean, put it the other way, they would conversely want to get you anyway. Like, it doesn't matter if you're, to them it doesn't matter.
Right. I am
again,
Jewish.
That's related to this sort of like Judaism not merely accepting although it is interesting how we have a matriarchal faith, but still recognizing the fact that, like, once you're a Jew for life in a certain sense, or you're sort of marked in that way.
Right. And, right. As a kid when I was in school, like elementary school, when people would put up their nationality and heritage and everything, I would tell people I'm half Italian, half Jewish, because that's how I sort of identified when I was younger.
Totally.
And then as I got older, and I wasn't sure, and I still am not sure. Am I Jewish? That's the question.
I wouldn't accept what the theocratic state of Israel defines as Jewish one way or the other. That's my 2 cents on that. And that, obviously, like, even rabbis themselves in large cases will say that, like, it's a book of fairy tales. We make of it what we make of it.
Right.
It's what we really live it. But just another thing on, again, like, Bernie having that great rhetoric. I know this is me extending it a bit more than it needs to be extended, but I can't help but want to rib Brooks a little bit and say this sounds a tiny, tiny bit like a protracted people's war. Because he's talking about, I mean, no, it's not really, Bernie isn't a secret Maoist. But there still is that language and that sort of like, that movement that our revolution is. That's fundamentally different from every other candidate. Because no one else has this.
You know what? I'll take it even further. I think that's a great point, but I think we should even take it a step further, because I think our revolution doesn't even begin to explore the size of this movement now. Because
of course not.
It's the apparatus in which they're working electorally. Yeah. But I think you could easily, not even I think, you can easily throw in all the movements that have stemmed out from Bernie 2016. Yeah. The Sunrise, they didn't come directly from Bernie, but Sunrise, any left DSA, exactly, any movement that grew out of the Bernie Sanders campaign showing that, hey, there's a left and we are going to make ourselves heard now, is part of this broad movement.
Sorry. In regions like New York, we have the Working Families Party, and then you got the Justice Democrats, who are also doing their own thing, which I think is very important, and getting elected.
And let's not forget that
it is bigger than our revolution. Just for me, what I mean by that is that it's also, it is similar to what I mean in the ideal sense that sort of like Obama's Office for Action was, but if that wasn't just electoral animal organism, whatever, our revolution is that with actual purpose and actual practice.
Well, I mean, you could already see the difference. I mean, when Organizing for America when Obama for America got Obama elected and became Organizing for America, say what you want about who they were, there were certainly some progressives, some centrists, some, progressive probably in the most, this is going to have a dual meaning here, progressive in the most liberal sense of the word. But, the people who
Republicans in a very special way.
Right. The people who were able to get Obama elected, after they got Obama elected, instead of working to grow the Democratic Party and help out other people, even just center left, instead of doing that, they went and got big paychecks from and started working for the tech companies, for the lobbyist firms. They didn't stick around, and that's completely different from what we saw after Bernie 2016. I mean, I worked with some people who worked for Bernie 2016 when I was helping out on the Cynthia Nixon campaign for governor.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's just something they did years later. Like in between, they were helping other progressive candidates. They were working in all other organizational capacities. There's a real movement that never existed. Well, not never existed, but hasn't existed in, I would say, at least since the Bush anti-war movement. And even that, I think, was
different.
Right.
That was different in its own way because it was particular. It wasn't general.
Right.
In the same way that like Occupy was general, but also didn't really have the praxis.
Right.
Instead, I mean, in a way, or in the most particular way, I mean, Bernie, by embodying this not me, us thing, is the real truth of his campaign. Because he realizes on a level that, like, yes, he's been doing the work and he has the work, but it's about the movement. If there wasn't this groundswell of people who wanted anyone who had the real integrity, the credentials to be Bernie, to be as close as to what a socialist could be in America, that is sort of what we've been looking for.
Right. No, I mean, on top of all that too, you know, everything we just mentioned, everything we were talking about. I mean, just the idea, and like I mentioned earlier, the fact that he's a Jewish man, taking on Trump and in essence taking on the alt-right and white supremacy. You know, there is the organizational capacity. Like, listen, Antifa does not have any political candidate of choice because it's not a movement. It's not an organization.
Well,
but
Antifa is a tactic of people like the DSA, the IWW.
Exactly. Yes.
The very far left.
Yes, that's what I wanted to get at there.
Yeah. And that, in and of itself, the trade unionization is an anti-fascist praxis. Organizing groups like the DSA is an anti-fascist praxis. It's just that, of course, we've sort of, because of the intensification that Trump presents, the black bloc has become so prominent. Because we're fighting literal beer hall pushes against the alt-right.
Right. I mean, it's something that I'm going to explore, and I hope it gets out there. And it's something none of the other candidates have. And Elizabeth Warren, I like her, I really do, and I know she's out there talking about how she's going to build a movement as well. But it's just not, it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to have that strong grassroots leftist quality to it for all the reasons you just mentioned, because the people who have been out there doing the work for not years, decades, literally decades, whether it be labor, whether it be a democratic socialist organizing, leftist organizing, whatever leftist ideologies you want to throw out there, any of those people, they're going to be Bernie people, just from the essence that the guy's been out there, always in that capacity. He has always been the organizer's candidate. He's always been the activist's candidate. He's always been the grassroots candidate because that's where he comes from. And listen, that's not poo-pooing on someone like Warren who came from academia and, you know, whatever, she was a Republican or whatever.
Yeah, Republican for 50 years.
Right. And I'm sure I'm going to end up shitting on her more when I think, I really do, I think it is bizarre that there is not very much about her as a Republican. I mean, 19-year-old, whatever it was, 16, 17-year-old Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl, and then she left the Republican Party. And we know so much about teenage Hillary as doing the work for Barry Goldwater. Like, the fact that there's not been anything, barely anything out there, I should say, on a 50, 45-year-old Elizabeth Warren being a Republican is astounding, and there's no doubt they're going to find people to talk about it. And
I feel like there was a Politico piece or something.
There was.
Talking about how, like, Republican people who were her students don't want to be on the record about how she was as a teacher because they just liked her so much.
Right.
So she is this sort of, I mean, again, maybe that's why Bernie really wanted her to run in 2016. He wanted her to sort of out Hillary as being the real quote-unquote progressive who can get things done.
Right.
But still, I see a strong possibility that there is some sort of Sanders-Warren-Sanders ticket to avoid a second ballot at the convention. So they pool their delegates together so that somehow they get over 50% of the vote. So you don't need to have a second ballot where the super delegates weigh in and who knows who's leading. But then at that point, maybe then Warren wants to be Warren Biden or Biden Warren. You don't know. That's why even saying that this is like a four-way race with Sanders, Warren, Biden, and Harris. I mean, for one thing, we might eventually get to the point where it's a three-way race, still a three-way race, but it's Sanders, Warren, and Harris maybe.
Right. I want all these.
Yeah.
I want all these centrists, Harris, Pete, Beto, to stay in, because they're just going to suck a little bit from Biden. Suck a little bit from even Warren. They're going to take from. Yeah. They're not going to. They're not touching Bernie's. I'll tell you that right now.
Nope.
I am looking forward to when Tulsi and Yang drop out. I think Bernie's going to gain from them. Again, we're talking 2 to 3% in the polls. But again, when we're talking the gap between Biden, Warren, Bernie, that 2 or 3% in the polls is going to matter.
There's a chance in my mind that those people have always been from clown world. And they're going back to the Trump campaign when Tulsi and Yang drop out.
No, Tulsi's gonna have a good amount of people.
I don't know if you have to respond to that poll, and I mean, again, you can lie and say you're not actually a registered Democrat.
Oh no, right. But
I do.
Well, in some places though, you don't have to be a registered Democrat, so it really wouldn't matter.
Sure.
I mean, there's not going to be if you're a Trump person, you're not voting in the. Or even considering Trump. If you're one of those weirdo, they exist. I shouldn't call them weirdos because I do think
independent voter,
right?
Really conservative, but socially liberal.
No, there's also and I know people shit on them because they voted for Trump, but I do think they're not going to vote for Trump this time around. There are those Obama voters who went for Trump, and I think, when you're just someone like that who, I don't know, a farmer, some sort of blue-collar guy in the Rust Belt or whatever in 2016, and you're not very political, and you're listening to what Trump is saying, and you think he's bullshitting, but you hate Hillary because you have felt the actual results of neoliberalism. Again, they don't know neoliberalism, but they know Bill Clinton. So they're just going to assume that Bill Clinton's NAFTA and all that shit that hurt them, Hillary's going to be for that. They're going to vote for Trump if they're going to vote. But I do think those people are not going to vote for Trump this time around.
At
least a good portion of them.
I would push you a little bit and say they are probably political, but they're not partisan in the way that we might be.
Right. People, I think, don't understand
because
that. People like you and me, we are in a bubble. We are so tuned into this. But the difference between people like you and me and others, usually those aren't on the left, centrists, moderates, right-wingers, they don't realize they're in a bubble. So they don't have the foresight to understand what they're saying only is reaching a certain politico set, and they don't have the capabilities to extend that further and reach out to people who are political but not in this bubble. But really, I mean, this has been, I think everything we've been talking about here is spot on. And what I want to say about Elizabeth Warren is, in that Politico piece you mentioned, and I'm not going to say this is her because we don't know that, and I like her, but one of the reasons she was apparently a Republican and had her feelings that she had then during the 90s was because she saw people in bankruptcy as being a certain type of person who deserved it. Like they were irresponsible and, that's what it was. And again, we don't know this at all. And again, I like her. I think she's really good, progressive, and she's a good leftist ally.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I really hope this isn't the case. But if you're a right winger or a conservative or a Republican, and you have an issue with people who were in bankruptcy because of the type of people they were, irresponsible or whatever, usually, not all the time, but usually, there's a race component to it.
Yeah.
So I really hope that's not the case, but
there's no way that it doesn't. And that sort of social Darwinism, like, always has a racial component.
Yes.
Because because the converse side of it is that there is a racial component, assuming that the people at the top have a meritocracy to what they've earned as well. That they didn't earn what they earned, not because of their identity and not their opponent stuff, that their identity was also enshrined in the most basic things, like your zip code, saying where you went to school, and where you went to school being based on your zip code. Those two things being intertwined is a huge component of how our society is so unequal,
right,
in so many ways.
Right. I mean, what I'm hoping is that pre-woke 90s Republican Elizabeth Warren just didn't realize those things. That's my hope. But right, I also don't think the polls are accurate. I'm not saying they're skewed or anything like that. I just think the way polls are carried out, just by design, they're missing people who are Bernie Sanders' constituency, and that's going to be people who don't usually vote. And we're seeing this just by...
I mean, there are exceptions. I was a registered Democrat in high school. My first vote was for Obama and for Kirsten Gillibrand when she was a Democrat in Dutchess County.
Right.
She was a congressional Democrat in Dutchess County, and she was a blue dog. And she did actually shed a lot of her blue dog coat. Not all of it, not enough, but it was interesting, just like seeing that progression over a decade. But I mean,
I voted. I tell people how I used this in 2016 a lot when people were like saying I was just a Hillary hater. I voted for Hillary Clinton in the 2008 primary though.
Oh wow!
Because at the time when it was basically between her and Obama, she was the candidate for universal health care. She was the one pushing for it in 2008. And listen, I'm not a single issue voter, but in 2008, that to me was a very important. I mean, it still is a very important issue. That's why one of the main reasons I'm with Bernie. But as great as Obama was in many aspects, Hillary had the universal health care plank, and that was enough to make her vote for. It wasn't I wasn't so against Obama that I voted for him twice, 2008 general and 2012 general, but Hillary I voted for in the primary, and I don't regret it at all because my message was plain and simple. We need universal health care in this country, and that's still one of my messages when I'm voting for Bernie. But it is what it is, and Grim, this has been an absolutely great call, and one of the reasons I would like to do more calls, and I'm going to really aim to do it, because of people like you. Thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for finding all these great guests and doing the research yourself and putting this together, because obviously you're doing real service for the community.
Give me too much credit. Credit
is what credit is due.
Thank you. I view this as infotainment. I don't feel like I'm educating you, but at the end of the day, it's an entertainment show.
Infotainment is more like TYT. This is a little cut above infotainment.
I appreciate it. I don't want to feel like I'm doing a service, because I don't feel like I'm doing a service. But
I mean, you still got some time to get your gray hairs like Amy Goodman.
Right. This isn't democracy now. I wouldn't listen. I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to do democracy now. I don't think I could be straightforward like that. I don't think it's in my blood. All it would take was for one guest. I could be sitting down talking about, I don't know, some sort of crisis in Greece or something, or a financial crisis in Greece or something, and all it's gonna take is for me to see one opportunity for a pun, and I'm gonna just have to. That's just who I am. I'm going for it. All
right. Then Tom Hartman maybe, or just Sam.
I think that's the best case. I think Sam's got.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my influence. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, you're not just an employer, but a mentor, and I mean, for all you know, you and Michael can fight over who gets to keep the estate when Sam either passes or retires, whatever.
Oh, I'm out. I've been out of there for almost 5 years now. I lost it already. That ship is sailed.
I guess it's between Mike and Jamie. They got to fight for it.
Right. Well, don't sleep on Matt Leck, man. Don't sleep on Leck.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, of course he could just sign it off to the whole lot of them.
Or Brendan will just sneak in. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, we have no it. I mean, for all we know, it could be the Grimlock show.
Oh, right. That could be the ultimate wild card. That'd be like Jill Stein winning 2016.
Yes. That would be like Jimmy Dore winning 2016.
Right. What's actually more likely is that it's going to be the majority report with Mila Cedar. That's actually.
Yes, well, that would be another one.
Right. That's
another
probably.
Option is that you raise them up to take on the family business.
What would actually be a very Sam Cedar move would be he would leave Michael the show, but the terms would be the name of the show must remain the Majority Report with Sam Cedar. I think nothing would bother Michael more than not being able to put his name on a show. So,
Yep.
All right, Grim, thank you so much. Have a good night, buddy.
Just one thing.
No, go ahead.
On that thought, the Memorial Report with Sam Cedar.
There you go. The Social Security Report is actually
yes.
with Sam Cedar. Right. Have a good night, buddy.
Thank you, Matt. Peace.
Take care. All right. Let me just read a few more. That was a great call, and it was a really good call. Let's see. Where did I leave off? Francis says, smash the like button. Ryan, just doing a quick drive-by because I'm at work. Fuck Bret Stephens. He's a soft-ass loser. Left his best. Grim on my background. Matt stole their weed. Renee says, I posted Dark Gritty Normandy landing on Twitter and added you at Matt Binder. All right, I'll have to check it out. I'm going to close the Skype just because don't have time for another call today. Renee says, the Matt Binder show. Brian said, totally thought you were in MR Studio tonight. Ah, the green screen works. Look at that. Right, just for people who are just tuning in maybe at the last minute. I'm in the Doom Studio, which is the corner of my apartment. That was Brian on Periscope who said that. Nicest person ever says, you have such cool hair. Well, thank you if you're being sincere, and also thank you if you're not. Renee says, it looks like the Gowanus Canal. Midnight Pizzaman says, Matt, did you see All Out? Did you hear Jericho had the AWE belt stolen? I did hear. This is a very wrestling-centric part of the show now, isn't it? But yes, I did not watch All Out. I have kept up with the results, though. And I did see that Jericho had to file a police report because he left his brand new AEW world title in the trunk of the limo when he went to go celebrate at a steakhouse and then went missing 2 hours later. First ever AEW all elite all AEW champion had the belt for just hours after becoming the first ever champ, and it's already been stolen. It's gonna go down in history, wrestling history at least. Hilarious. I would love to have seen Jericho's reaction. Renee says, nicest person ever. Andy Kindler confirmed. Andy Kindler is very nice. I'll do the post-punk doom tune when I get my interface, says Renee. Play your band, says Renee. Gotta say punk rocker. I should play the old band. Doc Dreamer says, I love Doomed and wait for it every week. Next month, I'll 100% join your Patreon. Thank you, Doc Dreamer. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to you joining us as a patron subscriber. Also, my partner, my girlfriend, the mother to my children, and my children, got me this really great gift for my birthday a few weeks ago. I got the Stream Deck. There we go. From Elgato, which is basically this really cool system where the light is sort of blurring it out there, where I can have sort of a soundboard and also create other sort of not automated, but one-touch button actions on the computer, which will make producing the show easier, and also I'll be able to do a few extra more complicated things that I have been skipping because I didn't want to leave, as you guys all know, I'm very bad at multitasking. So there'd be moments of silence on the show if I was trying to do some more technical producing work. So this should help. Renee says, boomers, I'll do the clapping. Boomers have rights too. Francis is laughing because of something Mr. Matt's dad said. Grim says, I don't remember my Skype log. Well, I'm glad you figured it out, Grim. That was from before you called in, I guess. Contact Boxian says, why would you go on TikTok when all the good ones get posted to Twitter? Exactly. Well, I guess if I wanted to be the trendsetter and find them first, right? I guess I'll have to start doing that, right? Renee says, dude, do a show with Grimlock. Grim was great. Grim should definitely call in more. I would love to. Maybe we should do Grim should call in and we should do like a weekly call-in or something. That'd be great. Bullwhip says, go Grimlock. Renee, I can't follow that. Oh, wait, Lord Arion. So Matt isn't helping the white genocide? That was to me being what I said about being Jewish, right? Bullwhip says, isn't there a big book of Jewish people or something? Lord Arion says, yeah, I think so, but I don't think Matt made the cut. Renee says, Bernie Corbin left his grandpa gang. Oh, what's going on in the UK? I gotta have someone on there to discuss. Bullwhip says, I think if you're baptized as Catholic, you would have to convert to Judaism. You're ethnically Jewish, though. Right. I'm definitely not religiously Jewish. That's never been a question. I'm talking about, I've always been wondering if I should say I'm Jewish when I'm talking about my ethnicity. But religious-wise, I would never say I'm Jewish because I'm not. That's not true at all. I've never thought that. Even in elementary school when I was telling people I was Jewish. Kennedy says, LOL, what's with that background, Matt? Oh, you missed it. Well, everyone said they wanted to see me out of the dark void that I usually was in. So I went ahead and, I studied YouTube channels on the left to see what sort of backgrounds they're using. And I saw what Sam is using, and I saw that David Pakman stole Sam Cedar's background. And I was disgusted by it. So I made sure to go in a completely different direction. It's something that it really disturbs me that anyone would use the background of another leftist YouTube channel as their own. It's gross. Renee says 2 shows for the price of 1. Oh, I guess what me and Grim. Yeah, Grim was really good to the point where, yes, I agree. It was like I had a pre-booked guest, not a call-in. Bulb says, lately it doesn't seem like Warren can speak without breaking down in tears. Does she think that's working for her? I've not seen that, actually. Is that something that's going on? I'm not even... Francis X says, I wish she'd be more public about how she moved to the left. Right, but the problem with that is that it would force her to focus on the fact that she was formerly a Republican into her 40s. Bulb says, is Yang an android fascist? I don't think Yang is got bad intentions. I think he's just wrong and misinformed. Lord Arion says, Yang Gang is just another libertarian trying to trick Democrats. Matthew Weiss, Film Guy Matthew on Facebook. Loving the new set. Thank you. It's original, right? Lord Arion says, Democrats specifically, leftists are hip to Yang Gang. Bulb says, Yang should debate Sam Cedar. I would watch that. Renee says, Yang should debate Grimm. Zoot Master says, I'll debate Grimm. Bulb says she experimented in college. Oh, you talking about Elizabeth Warren? She experimented in college about being a Republican. Kennedy says, I'll debate anyone. I'll debate a B. Barry says, oh no, Matt's been recaptured by Sam. Francis X says, I hear there are some pretty regressive legal writings from the 70s and 80s, but I haven't really looked into it. Oh, from Warren, right? I've heard about that too. Zootmaster says a good chunk of the reliable Democratic base supports Bernie. Right, and that's what we see in the polls. And on top of that there's going to be a number of people who aren't in that category, who are without a doubt supporting him. Zoot says if it was just fringe lefties, he wouldn't poll as well as he does. Absolutely. Kennedy doing her best Amy Goodman impression. Hello, welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Champagne Kami says, love the new background. Thank you. Bulb says, I got up at 3:30 a.m. this morning, ran some errands and shopping, watched MR, took a nap, watched TMBS, and now I'm here. I still can't get caught up on the internet. It's hard, a lot of shows. Thank you for making this one a priority. I really appreciate it. Kennedy says the Grimlock and Kennedy show. What's going on here? I'm getting booted out of my own show because of how good of a guest Grim was. My dad says kudos dank. I have no idea what he's talking about. Weird words to see coming from your father. Okay, kudos Grim. All right, he thought Dank Uger was talking. He was using dank as a noun, not dank. Well, dank as a name, not as dank as in the slang. Okay. He meant to say kudos Grim. Barry says lies. Sam has him. I'm captured by Sam, right? Grim says, it was a pleasure to call in. I didn't notice until just now that I probably should have scooted over a bit, but no, it's fine. It wasn't like you were just enough out of frame where it looked like a purposeful framing of the camera. It looked like it was set up purposely that way to add like a mystique to you. It wasn't like an awkward, like if I was just like talking to you guys like this. Champagne says that Matt's laugh is very similar to mine. I don't know about that. I've never met anyone with a laugh like mine. As everyone on the Majority Report when I worked there let me know. Grim says, I got a notice early on that I had used 75% of my phone line's hotspot data, so I was worried it might cut out. Ooh, you did good though. Xerxes says, Matt, did anyone tell you you are cool as heck? Why, thank you. My dad says I had one of the IFC songs, that was my old punk band, as my ringtone, but forgot the name. Renee says, wish my dad was as cool as you, Alan Binder. Aww. I bet you have my dad feeling very good right now, Renee. Grim is already planning his next call-ins based on his data resetting. Zootmaster says, catching the sentimental Dem vote that is jumping ship from Biden right now. Seems like it, right? Token Reform Libertarian says, another impression here. This is Juan Gonzalez, right? Grim says, I reacquired my Skype credentials in the nick of time. All right, folks. The final comment of the day. Kennedy. Sometimes I laugh like an evil forest imp or lawn gnome. Thank you, Kennedy. I'm so happy I could share that with everyone. All right, folks. Thank you so much for being Patreon members and supporters and subscribers. Really appreciate all your support. Can't thank you enough. See you all next time on Doomed.